Deep inside a mountain in Hebei Province, Chinese engineers blasted a colossal underground vault out of solid granite, large enough to comfortably swallow 3 entire NFL football stadiums stacked end to end. This is not a military bunker. It is the Fengning pumped storage power station, the largest gravity-based water battery on Earth. While legacy Western power grids constantly beg citizens to turn off their air conditioners to avoid summer blackouts, China engineered an immortal 3.6 gigawatt energy fortress. By blasting 190 subterranean tunnels and installing 12 massive reversible turbines, the State Grid Corporation built a system capable of jump-starting a metropolis the size of Los Angeles the second the wind stops blowing. While the West gambles its entire energy future on fragile, short-lived lithium-ion farms, China executed a $2.6 billion masterstroke to guarantee its industrial grid simply never fails. The fragile state of legacy electrical grids is actively threatening Western economic stability. In places like Texas, ERCOT routinely struggles to keep the lights on when extreme weather hits. Grid watchdogs point out that these regional authorities rely heavily on ancient fossil fuel peaker plants to prevent sudden blackouts. These outdated natural gas facilities sit idle for most of the year, costing taxpayers millions in maintenance, only to fire up and pollute the atmosphere the moment solar and wind generation drops. Energy market analysts describe this as a catastrophic structural flaw. When a massive winter storm or a blistering heatwave strikes, these fragile peaker plants frequently freeze or experience mechanical failures, leaving millions of homes plunged into darkness. Utility executives then pass the skyrocketing emergency energy cost directly onto the consumer, essentially charging families a premium for a failing service. China bypassed this decaying, fossil-dependent trap entirely. Instead of patching together a network of vulnerable gas burners, the State Grid Corporation of China transformed the physical geography of Fengning County into an invincible grid stabilizer. They engineered a 40 gigawatt-hour reservoir system, a kinetic energy stockpile mathematically equivalent to millions of electric vehicle batteries, hidden completely out of sight. By pumping millions of cubic meters of water up a mountain during periods of excess solar generation, they capture wasted energy and hold it indefinitely. When the Beijing-Tianjin North Hebei grid experiences a sudden demand spike, valves open, and gravity instantly pushes that water back down through the turbines. This creates a flawless, zero-emission safety net that Western operators physically lack. If you want to see exactly how a network of 190 deep subterranean tunnels can absorb the crushing pressure of a falling mountain to generate power, and why this specific facility threatens the entire global lithium supply chain, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. In the early 2010s, Yu Zhenya stood at the helm of the State Grid Corporation of China and recognized a fatal math problem hindering the global green energy transition. Western energy conglomerates were attempting to solve grid intermittency by investing heavily in chemical storage. They built massive fields of lithium-ion batteries to catch excess solar and wind power. Yu understood that relying on lithium to back up an entire civilization was a logistical dead end. Chemical batteries degrade with every single charge cycle, suffering from a 10 to 15-year functional lifespan. This creates a decaying chemical timeline that forces utility companies to tear out and replace their entire infrastructure before a child finishes high school. The financial maintenance required to sustain a lithium-based grid is astronomical. Western utilities must constantly source rare earth metals from volatile global supply chains, construct fragile megawatt-scale battery packs, and deploy complex fire suppression systems to prevent catastrophic thermal runaway. When these cells inevitably degrade, the grid operator is forced to absorb the massive capital cost of replacing them entirely. Yu Zhenya bypassed this chemical bottleneck by leaning into raw geology. He championed a 19.24 billion yuan, roughly $2.6 billion strategy to build the Fengning pumped storage power station. Instead of buying fragile battery cells, the State Grid Corporation utilized the natural topography of Hebei Province. They created a storage system where the primary components are simply water, granite, and gravity. The structural lifespan of a blasted granite cavern and a heavy-duty steel penstock easily exceeds 100 years. By substituting degrading chemical cells with permanent civil infrastructure, China effectively neutralized the massive recurring maintenance costs that currently paralyze American and European grid expansions. This aggressive pivot transformed a mountainous region located 145 kilometers northwest of Chengde into an immovable national asset. The Fengning facility operates as a towering 3.6 gigawatt peaking power plant, meticulously designed to balance the unpredictable power supply flowing in from vast wind and solar parks across northern Hebei and Inner Mongolia. Liu Jianya treated the mountain exactly like a strategic military installation, building a zero-wear storage vault capable of operating seamlessly into the next century. To power a modern society without coal, engineers must tame the chaos of the weather. Storing 40 gigawatt-hours of energy without using a single ounce of lithium requires manipulating hydrodynamics at an unprecedented scale. The physical layout of the Fengning facility is a masterpiece of subterranean engineering. The system requires two massive bodies of water to function. The upper reservoir sits at Huiyao on the left bank of the Luanhe River, capturing and withholding up to 48.83 million cubic meters of water. Far below, the lower reservoir utilizes an existing hydropower facility basin, creating a massive 425-meter hydraulic head between the two lakes. That is a sheer vertical drop taller than the Empire State Building, generating immense gravitational pressure. Connecting these two lakes is a subterranean labyrinth stretching longer than a full Olympic marathon. Engineers blasted 190 different underground caverns and tunnels, carving out 50.1 kilometers of pathways through the solid bedrock. When excess wind and solar electricity flood the local grid, the facility consumes up to 8.71 terawatt-hours of power annually just to push water uphill. It forces the fluid against gravity, storing it quietly in the upper reservoir until the grid begins to starve. Deep inside the mountain sits the true mechanical heart of the operation. The main underground powerhouse is an excavated void 414 meters long, 54.5 meters high, and 25 meters wide. Installed across this massive granite floor are 12 reversible Francis pump turbine units, each boasting a 300 megawatt capacity. When energy demand spikes, operators open the steel gates, allowing millions of gallons of water to violently rush down the 425-meter vertical drop. The kinetic energy slams into the steel impellers, allowing the facility to switch from a dormant pumping mode to generating electricity at maximum capacity in exactly 5 minutes. 10 of these 12 massive machines operate at a fixed speed, functioning as heavy-duty traditional hydro generators. The remaining 2 machines possess a unique structural advantage. Supplied with advanced variable speed technology, these two 330 megavolt-ampere pump turbines can dynamically alter their rotational velocity. This specific frequency modulation allows the massive steel blades to speed up or slow down in real time, actively absorbing jagged, fluctuating electrical currents. Because Fengning is connected to a highly advanced, flexible direct current grid, these variable speed units capture erratic spikes of solar power with absolute microscopic precision. The alternating revolutions per minute stabilize the incoming load, ensuring the internal mechanical stress never shatters the turbine shafts. This quiet fluid adaptability happens hundreds of meters underground, continuously absorbing the shock waves of China's massive renewable energy rollout without human intervention. The sheer scale of this subterranean storage network is actively rewriting the foundation of global energy logistics. Inside the command centers of the State Grid Corporation of China, engineers are not just managing a single mountain fortress. By the end of 2024, the state-owned utility had already brought over 40 gigawatts of pumped storage capacity online across the nation. Simultaneously, construction crews are currently blasting bedrock to build an additional 53 gigawatts of identical infrastructure. This staggering 94 gigawatt deployment equates to a gravitational power reserve large enough to effortlessly support the entire peak electricity demand of the United Kingdom, completely independent of fossil fuels. Far beyond the granite walls of the Fengning facility, a massive web of high-voltage transmission lines connects this subterranean battery directly to the sprawling Zhangjiakou wind and solar bases. High in the northern deserts, endless rows of photovoltaic panels and wind turbines generate chaotic, highly cyclical surges of clean electricity. To transport this raw voltage, China integrated Fengning into the world's first flexible direct current grid. This dedicated electrical artery funnels unpredictable desert power straight into the Luanhe River Valley, entirely bypassing the congested regional networks that traditionally choke renewable energy distribution. At maximum capacity, the upper reservoir quietly holds enough potential energy to power the supply station at full output for nearly 11 hours. That translates to almost 40 gigawatt-hours of pure electricity suspended perfectly in the atmosphere, transforming a barren, high-altitude lake into the most critical stabilizing asset in North China. Western utility planners frequently abandon gravity-based storage due to grueling, decade-long environmental lawsuits and exorbitant upfront capital requirements. They retreat to installing scattered fields of lithium-ion shipping containers, desperately hoping the degrading chemical cells survive the next brutal winter. China simply scaled the physics of water displacement to a continental level, aggressively turning geographic elevation into an infinitely rechargeable, zero-degradation power grid. Legacy utility operators in Europe and North America built their modern green energy strategies on a fatal structural vulnerability. By relying almost exclusively on chemical battery farms to back up their solar arrays, Western grids became completely tethered to highly volatile global supply chains. If a massive geopolitical shock restricts access to lithium, cobalt, or nickel, the American energy transition grinds to a devastating permanent halt. Grid operators are currently trapped in a vicious cycle of replacing degrading battery modules every decade, bleeding municipal budgets dry just to maintain baseline emergency storage. By weaponizing the internal mechanics of a mountain, China effectively nullified the need for chemical storage at the grid level. This is exactly where the advanced variable speed pump turbine technology becomes a lethal geopolitical advantage. When a sudden, massive cloud bank rolls over the Zhangjiakou solar bases, the sudden drop in voltage threatens to violently destabilize the entire Beijing-Tianjin North Hebei grid. A traditional electrical network would trigger emergency rolling blackouts to prevent the transformers from melting down. The variable speed units inside Fengning completely ignore these violent atmospheric fluctuations. By dynamically altering the rotational speed of the heavy steel impellers in real time, the facility executes ultra-fast primary frequency control and peak shaving. The turbines instantly absorb the chaotic surges and dips of the renewable energy supply, manipulating the load adjustments during the pumping phase with absolute mathematical precision. The massive facility acts as a flawless shock absorber, reducing the impact of fluctuating wind and solar without risking a single microsecond of grid collapse. This mechanical supremacy creates an insurmountable strategic moat. While Western nations spend billions subsidizing fragile battery startups and fighting over mineral rights in foreign continents, China established an unbreakable domestic storage monopoly using nothing but domestic concrete, steel, and water. A pumped storage cavern does not require imported cobalt, and it will never catch fire due to thermal runaway. The state secured a massive 100-year infrastructure advantage that outlasts the chemical lifespan of any Western battery farm. Deep inside the 414-meter-long subterranean cavern, the operational advantages of Fengning multiply with every passing hour. While utility authorities abroad scramble to assemble volatile chemical battery farms that will inevitably require massive capital replacements by 2035, China is securing an infinitely rechargeable infrastructure loop. The compounding 5 to 10-year outlook completely shields the nation's energy grid from the global scramble for rare earth metals. Because a gravitational battery functions without deteriorating lithium cells, the operational downtime approaches zero. To maintain this relentless efficiency, the State Grid Corporation integrated the heavy mechanical hardware with an ultra-responsive digital nervous system. Massive data streams constantly analyze incoming voltage from the 10-gigawatt Zhangjiakou solar and wind hubs. Highly advanced predictive algorithms map incoming weather systems across the northern deserts. If a sudden drop in wind speed is detected hundreds of miles away in Inner Mongolia, the central computer instantly prepares the 12 reversible Francis turbines. Without a single human operator manually adjusting the flow, the facility unleashes millions of tons of water down the 425-meter hydraulic head, preemptively stabilizing the grid before a regional blackout can even materialize. This flawless digital management transforms the Luanhe River Valley into an autonomous, hyper-reactive energy vault. In stark contrast, massive lithium-ion storage farms installed in Texas or South Australia frequently suffer from severe thermal throttling. Scorching summer heat waves force chemical batteries to limit their discharge rates to prevent catastrophic thermal runaway, while brutal winter freezes aggressively drain their stored capacity. The Fengning facility completely bypasses this biological vulnerability. Encased deep inside a solid granite mountain, the internal temperature remains perfectly stable year-round. The underground water battery is entirely immune to the violent atmospheric conditions that routinely cripple above-ground infrastructure. Expanding this localized superiority, the Chinese government is actively drafting blueprints to replicate the Fengning model at a continental scale. Current state directives aim to shatter the 120 gigawatt ceiling of national pumped storage capacity by the end of the decade. This represents an infrastructure deployment so massive it physically redraws the geography of clean power generation. While European and North American engineers remain bogged down in decade-long zoning debates and critical mineral supply chain bottlenecks, Chinese construction crews are actively blasting dozens of new subterranean caverns across multiple provinces. By coupling these massive water batteries directly to high-voltage, flexible direct current transmission networks, China effortlessly isolates its advanced manufacturing hubs from the chaos of intermittent renewables. A massive semiconductor foundry or a commercial aerospace factory operating near Beijing requires absolute uninterrupted power to fabricate highly sensitive components. A microsecond voltage dip ruins delicate manufacturing runs and destroys millions of dollars of raw materials. The variable speed units at Fengning guarantee that these industrial sectors receive a flawlessly smooth, perfectly flat line of pure power, regardless of what the weather is doing in the distant desert. Every time an American or European utility grid expands its chemical storage capacity, it directly funds a highly contested, environmentally destructive mining pipeline in foreign nations. They are forced to continuously purchase heavy metals at highly inflated market prices just to maintain their existing baseline. The State Grid Corporation replaced this endless financial drain with a one-time structural investment. Once the granite is carved and the steel turbines are installed, the only fuel required is gravity and water. This decouples China's green energy transition from international commodity markets, ensuring their domestic power supply remains totally immune to foreign embargoes or price shocks. This is the ultimate long-term strategic divergence. The reliance on deteriorating, flammable battery pods establishes a fragile temporary fix to a permanent global problem. China ignored the temporary fix and used raw geographic scale to its advantage, turning the very crust of the Earth into an invincible power bank. They are rapidly locking in a century of flawless grid stability, rendering the trillion-dollar global lithium rush largely irrelevant for macro-level energy storage. As long as gravity exists, the 3.6 gigawatt fortress beneath Hebei will never stop spinning. The era of relying on fragile, degrading chemical batteries to back up the modern electrical grid is effectively over. We previously assumed that solving the green energy intermittency problem required digging up millions of tons of lithium and hoping the packs survived the winter. China completely shattered that assumption by hollowing out a mountain to build a permanent 3.6 gigawatt water battery. By turning geographic elevation and raw water displacement into the ultimate shock absorber, they secured an invincible infrastructure loop that outlasts any chemical cell by nearly a century. Western grid operators continually patching their failing systems with highly volatile shipping containers of batteries have already lost the geopolitical storage race. If a hollowed-out mountain can guarantee flawless power for a major metropolis without using a single ounce of lithium, can traditional chemical battery farms truly survive the next decade of grid demands? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below.